The rise and fall of empires, the most critical macro-political issue that confronts America today. You cannot have a discussion about the United States of America without coming to terms, realizing and understanding America's role in the world and the fact that we operate an empire. Throughout the history of the world, people, nation states, and countries have sacrificed everything in order to impose their values on others, to spread their culture, to spread their trade, and unfortunately, to plunder the resources of defenseless and helpless peoples. After the fall of the British Empire and following World War II, and more specifically after the Cold War, America became the undisputed superpower in the world. So what does history hold as arguably the greatest nation on earth? Do we need nearly 800 American military installations around the world? Can democracy come about at the point of a gun? Joining me now is Paul Farrell, columnist for MarketWatch.com. Paul, welcome to Freedom Watch.
Good to be here, Judge.
No question but that we have an empire. I mean, with the 800 military installations, I think it's 787, but it changes all the time, would startle most people. The budget of the Defense Department would startle most people. Why aren't they startled when they realize that the government that finances all of this is bankrupt?
The answer is I don't know, but there are some people that what I'm finding is that financial historians and anthropologists look at this and they see it as inevitable that the American empire will decline, just as over the centuries and over the eons that all great empires, civilizations, societies eventually do collapse. And the reason that they collapse is that they don't prepare. They block out. There's such a... In fact, I've got a follow-up piece where I'm comparing this with what I'm calling now the Hurt Locker kill zone syndrome that financial traders get involved in. There's a competing thing that goes on here. The people that are traders, when something is going wrong, I mean, I'm sure you saw the Michael Lewis's review last night about the Big Short, about what happened in setting up the collapse over the 2007, 2009, and basically what seems to be happening is that everybody who is a short-term thinker on Wall Street, the insiders and the traders, when things are beginning to collapse and go wrong, they focus in on short-term opportunities and they go into a very short hunt mode.
All right, Paul, is the American empire destined to collapse because we're an empire, because we have 800 military installations around the world, because we spend money and blood and treasure and use force to impose our values on others? Or is the American empire going to collapse because we're running out of money, because we spend more than we take in, because we think we can solve a problem caused by borrowing and spending with more borrowing and spending?
Well, you know, Kevin Phillips, as I quoted in there, Kevin Phillips, who was he's a political historian and a former Nixon strategist.
Right.
He's had a great quote that I've used this many times because I think it captures so much in just a few words. Most great nations, at the peak of their economic power, become arrogant and wage great wars at great cost, wasting vast resources, taking on huge debt, and ultimately burning themselves out. Look, this is not just a situation with whether it's Clinton, whether it's Reagan, whether it's Bush, whether it's Obama. There's a broader something else that goes on underneath where people get arrogant, want to spend more money, think it's a forever thing. It's just not. You know this. I know this.
Can we impose American values on societies which for 1,000 years have not accepted Western values? Stated differently, can we force the people in the Middle East at the point of a gun to accept a democratic system of government that they don't understand, have never had, and probably don't want?
We can't do it. And what we seem to be doing constantly is thinking somehow or another that we have to arrogantly impose our values. We can't. Maybe a true empire where you have dictators at the top is what works. We know darn well from experience. I saw the Green Zone last night, and I think that it made a very good, strong point. You go in there, you try to impose your own values when they have their own way of doing things. If we had not deposed Saddam Hussein, he would have been holding Iran in check. As it is, we've released, it exposed and created two more warring efforts that are diminishing our own resources, sapping our strength, sapping our resources. And you're right. I've written about this about our military expenditures. We can't keep doing this. And we think somehow or another we can. It's an arrogance of hubris that we just keep thinking that somehow or another we can do it. We can't.
We're chatting with Paul Farrell, who writes for MarketWatch.com. Why do you say, Paul, that the fall of the American empire will be swift, silent, and certain?
Because I've been looking at and reading a lot about this, particularly one I would highly recommend if anybody wants to see this, start reading Niall Ferguson's works. The guy has written about, he should be getting a Nobel Prize at some point, but he's written maybe 5 to 6 or 7 major works. He's a Scottish historian, and he basically tells us that we cannot continue, that it will be swift, that we cannot continue doing what we're doing. However, we're blind to it. There's a psychological blindness that begins taking over people.
What is the psychological blindness? Is it a fear that if we don't support the military, we are somehow un-American? Is it a belief that our values and our structure of government is so far superior to others that we must thrust it upon them? What is the root and cause of that belief?
I don't have a specific answer. Let me give you a quote that Ferguson put in the Foreign Affairs Journal recently.
You're talking about Niall Ferguson.
Niall Ferguson, yeah. And he said, for centuries, historians, political theorists, anthropologists, and the public have tended to think that the political process is seasonal, cyclical in terms. We discern a rhythm in history. Great powers like great men are born, they rise, they reign, and then they gradually wane. No matter whether civilizations decline culturally, economically, or ecologically, their downfalls are protracted. However, he says, we're deceiving ourselves, convinced that the challenges we face in the United States are often represented by slow-burning threats that seem to be very remote. But then he asks the critical question, but what if history is not cyclical, not slow-moving, but arrhythmic? What if history is, at times, almost stationary, but also capable of accelerating suddenly like a sports car? What if collapse does not arrive over a number of centuries, but comes suddenly like a thief in the night? That's what kind of fear. And he says that the leaders don't see this. It's a psychological arrogance and hubris, the kind of things that we're seeing on Wall Street. And Wall Street basically is running our government today.
Paul Farrell from MarketWatch.com. Thanks for joining us on Freedom Watch.
Thank you.
You can catch today's show on FoxNews.com/Freedom Watch and on Sirius 145 XM 168 or online at FoxNewsTalk.com at 6 p.m. Eastern on Saturdays. From New York, defending freedom. Until the next time, stay free, America.